What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Rufus. We are back at it again with another installment of the Rufus Rundown. It's been a little bit since we last talked. I think it's been about a week since we had Brandon Mendes on the show, and I haven't been able to react to a lot of the NFL, which I would have liked to, and I've also got a couple of stories I want to touch upon, but Monday I will be doing more of that. We will have a complete show, but today we have a brief show leading into the AFC and NFC championship games, which will be kicking off at 3 and 6 o'clock. So I'll be breaking down a little bit of what I saw in the divisional round, as well as my phone. Probably silent that. As well as my predictions for the championship games today with the breakdown of what I saw in the divisional round. So without further ado, let's get into it. But before we do, be sure to be following the Rufus Rundown on all formats of social media, linked in the YouTube description below. It's going to be pretty much at Rufus Rundown for everything except TikToks. And then obviously for Facebook, it would be the Rufus Rundown Facebook page. So please be sure to like and follow there. And also like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you do tune into this podcast. So now let's get into it. First and foremost, we have the Baltimore Ravens. This was a game that I thought that the Texans could at least cover, and I thought they'd keep it a little closer, but Lamar Jackson did show up with 4 total touchdowns. He ran for 100. He threw for 150. Quite a unique day for Lamar Jackson, being able to move all over the place. Spread the wealth around in the receiver core. Wasn't anything too crazy. I think that the Ravens defense had a good day against the young C.J. Stroud. But I said, really efficient day for Lamar Jackson. I think that's been the name of the game with Lamar Jackson, is the fact that he has just been as efficient as he has, 16 of 22. They haven't called upon him to do too much. The 100 rushing yards kind of scares me in the sense of, for him to be the leading rusher, I don't know if we're going to play, if the Ravens are going to win, especially against the Chiefs, which we'll get into later in the episode, if I want Lamar Jackson moving around that much. But overall, I think that the defense, they made C.J. Stroud struggle. They really defended the run well. And then the Ravens just, they were able to play at the tempo that they wanted to play at. They dictated the pace of the game, and that's really how it went. I mean, it was obviously early. You're tied at the break. But then in the second half, they really dictated the tempo. So once they picked it up in the second half, the adjustments were good. That's on Harbaugh. You can say a lot of good things about the Texans, which we'll be getting into as well. But all things considered for the Baltimore Ravens and what their defense was able to do, and I think when you have a defense like that, you don't always have to show up offensively. And the fact that they paced themselves to then just steadily pull away in this game, I think was a huge win. And I think it's huge on Lamar Jackson to have a 4-touchdown performance in the playoffs as well. I mean, I think he's 1-3 in the playoffs coming into this game and had not played well. And more specifically, mobile quarterbacks were starting kind of this downward trend when it comes down to it with the NFL in terms of especially the playoffs as well too. But to run for 100 yards and 11 carries and just lead the team that way, I think he's dynamic talent. I think Lamar Jackson's he's arguably a top 5 quarterback, definitely a top 10 quarterback, and he's throwing the football a lot better this year. I mean, his accuracy continues to improve, and I think that's where you have to really. I like Lamar Jackson throwing the football, but it's a matter of how much he has to move to throw it. So that's one thing. I don't question his throwing as much as I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people just be like, he runs, so that's all he can do. He cannot. He is a very talented thrower of the football. I still think the Chiefs defense will make it very difficult for him coming up today. But anyways, we'll see. He became the first quarterback since at least 1948 in the regular season or playoffs with at least 2 touchdown passes and 2 touchdown runs, 100 yards rushing, and 100 passer rating in the same game. So, I mean, it was a pretty good day from Lamar Jackson when it was all said and done. Yeah, so it's a second victory in 5 playoff games for Lamar Jackson. So 2-3 now in the playoffs. Of course, that first one, I don't know if you traditionally count that, considering how much he struggled against the Chargers. But, Lamar's an MVP candidate, and there's a lot of expectations on Lamar Jackson. And now we have the news of course, with John Harbaugh coaching him up here and another playoff run for this Ravens team. You have the news of Jim Harbaugh moving to the NFL, which again we'll be touching upon Monday. A lot of news with the Harbaughs, a lot of news with the Swifts and the Kelseys of the world. And I think there's a lot to talk about for all these teams. But then as you move towards what the Ravens want to be in these playoffs I think a lot of people forget about them. I think a lot of people are really kind of hoping for them to dethrone the Chiefs. I think that's their big hope right now. But again, we'll be getting into the picks later. It'll allow us to transition to what I thought of the Texans in this game. And again, it's going to be the same type of conversation between the Texans and Packers. I think the fact that the Packers continue to struggle against specific teams in the playoffs, like LaFleur struggling against, obviously, Shanahan and the 49ers, which him coming from the Shanahan system, I think kind of makes sense because Shanahan kind of, taught him a lot. But more on the Texans with a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback, and the second pick in the draft, there were a lot of questions with C.J. Stroud. And when he refused to take the test and was kind of, Jim Craig for the Miracle team, the goaltender that said, they didn't want to take Herb Brooks' test. Well, I mean, C.J. Stroud didn't either, and the dude has balled out since. I mean, not test takers, or quarterbacks. I mean, there's a lot to be said, and there's a lot of intangibles, yes, for the quarterback position, but it's clear that C.J. Stroud is a playmaker. Of course, struggled in this game, and there's still a lot of career left, but I think that in terms of what he was able to do, I mean, early in this season was arguably an MVP. I mean, this Texans team is not where they are if it's not for the way C.J. Stroud steps into this role and thrives early as a rookie. And, he had a really good opening playoff game to win, and I thought they would beat the Browns, and it was an impressive victory for them, all things considered, for C.J. Stroud and the Texans. That this one is struggling a little bit more, but I do think that with C.J. Stroud at the helm of all the teams that we've seen in the playoffs this year, they have the brightest future. I think of the up-and-coming franchises, I certainly do think that they have the brightest future by far. I don't even think it's really close, to be honest with you, with how much you've seen from C.J. Stroud, and you have him on the steal. I mean, in that Cleveland game, he goes for 274 and 3 touchdowns in his first playoff appearance against a really, really good Browns defense. Now, of course, that Browns defense, weirdly enough, was number one in the league, but so good at home and it put him number one in the league, but also so bad in the road that they were last in road defense, which is kind of a strange topic when you think about it in terms of why would a defense be so much better at home than it does in the road. But he loses Tank Dell too, and maybe Tank Dell makes a difference in that game against the Ravens. I'm not so sure. I just think that you're running into a buzzsaw in that defense of the Ravens as a rookie quarterback and a veteran head coach. I just think that the writing was on the wall there when it came to the result of that football game. But I think that hands down, the Texans with C.J. Stroud at the helm have the brightest future of not only any team that we've seen in the playoffs this year, but any team in the NFL. Period. I mean, I'll be giving you guys some power rankings on the brightest futures of some of the up-and-coming teams in the NFL. I mean, a little bit of a segment there, but I do think that they have the brightest future in the NFL with C.J. Stroud, with a rookie head coach in DeMeco Ryans. I think it's clear that the future is bright. They have Will Anderson, too. I think he's going to a Pro Bowl considering injuries, so that was the edge rusher they took with 2 of their top 5 picks. So it's clear that they have drafted well. If they can continue to draft well, I think that's even, obviously more imperative. Any team to draft well, it's an imperative part of finding success in this league. But I think that now that you have your quarterback, you have a legit edge threat, you have good solid defense, you have a defensive-minded head coach with a good relationship with this quarterback. I certainly can see this team having success for years to come. And it's kind of the same conversation about the Packers too, right? With Jordan Love and how good they were. Basically it was an identical stat line to C.J. Stroud when it came around to it. The kid really turned around his season. I was super impressed with what Jordan Love was able to do, because there were parts of this year where you're really pulling your hair out when you're watching Jordan Love, and then they go out and absolutely destroy the Packers on. Love was on a heater. Romeo Doubs goes off for over 150 yards. Of course, Jordan Love, 3 touchdowns, 272 yards. It was in 16 to 21 passes. It was a damn near identical stat line to C.J. Stroud. And these are 2 first-year starters, one being a rookie and Love obviously having sat behind Aaron Rodgers. There's something about this Packers system of quarterbacks where you draft the Favre, and Favre does well, and then you have, Rodgers sit behind Favre, and then Rodgers does well, and now you have Love sit behind him, and he's doing well. We'll see, of course, contract extension and stuff too, because of how it works with them sitting behind him for those so many years. But again, this playoff game between those two, I thought that Love deserved more hype kind of going into this one, and I was like, again, this is one that I thought that the Cowboys would win. I really thought they would cover too. I thought that this was a Cowboys team that was undefeated at home, and I guess that was the wrong thing. Maybe you should have lost one during the season because you should have broke that trend earlier because see how long it would go on for. But this was a big conversations about the NFC East and in that wild card game, and they stumble. I mean, the Eagles just stumble, but it leads to what Jordan Love was, eventually able to do. Of course, that they stumbled to the 49ers, right? So, I mean, I don't know. It was impressive what he was able to do in his first playoff start. And again, I think you're kind of playing with house money at that point when you do break into the divisional round against the 49ers. But it wasn't really, and Brock Purdy struggled for the majority of it, which we'll get into. I mean, once again, it was that big interception by Jordan Love late that hurts him. And I don't think their future is as bright as the Texans. I still think that they're, just because of how much Jordan Love did actually struggle earlier in this season, it is still worrisome to me as to whether, obviously you've seen the bright side. We've also seen the lows. So, what truthfully is the future for Green Bay? But, you can only go up from there. I still think that the Texans' future is brighter than the Green Bay Packers going forward with C.J. Stroud at quarterback. But overall, I think it is wild really freaky how they've continued to hit on quarterbacks like this. I think you have a franchise guy in Jordan Love. I think you can build around him. Now, like I said, is it as bright as and some of the other outcomes you might have? No, I don't necessarily think so. But I think that the more that they add weapons, you still have Aaron Jones there. And even at his age, you should be able to get a value out of him. Considering how well that the Packers have drafted on both sides of the football, I think between their drafting and hitting on a quarterback, I think the biggest thing with your drafting is that you don't have to draft with this stress of making up for the fact of you didn't get the quarterback right. When you get the quarterback right, I think it makes drafting easier because you can correct a lot of the wrongs with the right quarterback. But if you're always looking for that main centerpiece, I think all those pieces are going to struggle, and you're truthfully not going to know what you have because of how abysmal your offense might be defensively. You might have to move pieces around, whatever, because you're struggling so much to in the field position battle. I think that when you get the quarterback position right, that it makes drafting everything else to surround that piece. It's the biggest piece, so easier. So you know that you have to build an O-line around said quarterback. There's certain weapons you can look into that will work well with him. I don't really necessarily think you have to pay a lot of receivers. If you have a cheap quarterback, a young quarterback that's on a young deal, you pay the weapons around him. But considering I think they're going to have to pay Jordan Love soon, that might not be the case. But then again, once you have a quarterback and you have a system in place, they've drafted receivers as well too. So, it's a young core coming together. And this was a house money situation. But the fact that they hung with this 49ers team, it wasn't really because of Jordan Love, I don't think, hanging around in this game. It was more or less because Brock Purdy struggled early and found himself late, which we'll get into. But, man, Jordan Love, I have to tip my cap because this is a guy that I didn't really... Had I written him off? No, but I had said in the podcast before that he made me want to tear my hair out at times early in the season. There's some throws that he would make where it's wow, this dude could sling it. And there were other moments where I was like, wow, this dude, this is who they thought was the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers. And again, the Packers at some point, you were expecting they were going to get it wrong at the quarterback position. They were going to have to, they couldn't get it right all the time. And then the second half of the season, he has an incredible turnaround. He's barely completing 50% of his passes for the first half of the season. The second half of the season, he's almost completing 70%. It was ridiculous. He couldn't make throws downfield. Then he was, lining up big explosive plays. I know there were some injuries in the receiver core as well, too. And they've obviously dealt with, some of the Jair Alexander stuff as a team. But overall, you again, with the Texans, you get the quarterback right. You have the right coach in place. The future is, again, bright for the Packers. And, again, I feel almost bad for the Lions. I don't feel bad for them yet because they're in the NFC Championship game. But you think, they finally start to turn things around with Jared Goff and their weapons and their system there. And then you think that the Packers get rid of Aaron Rodgers, they're down and out. No, Kirk Cousins might be leaving, which might help him with the Vikings depending on where he goes in free agency. But you would think that, hey, the Packers aren't going to be able to hit a quarterback again. And here they go again. They do. So you feel bad for the rest of the NFC North because now they have another stud in this division. It's going to be highly competitive in that division with a guy like Jordan Love at the helm. And now it allows me to move on to another young quarterback, kind of a theme here, I guess, because it's just the The old guard is out and the new guard is in, and this is a 7th-round pick. This is Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy. And everybody just seems to not want this dude to succeed. Being Mr. Irrelevant, I don't think they want the story. They don't want to be the NFL is scripted deal. And this country at this point doesn't like winners, and I think it's mainly my generation too, with the participation trophies and feeling entitled to everything, and if it is not theirs, they find a way to tear it down. And because Brock Purdy has a lot of weapons around him, and is a product of a team environment that is good, and he makes the right decision in the right plays, given he struggled early in this game against the Packers, still found a way to get it done. There were times where Tom Brady would struggle all game. It'd be an absolute dogfight. But when the lights were brightest, he'd show up down the field and make it happen. Win Super Bowls, win big games, big come-from-behind victories. Brock Purdy did exactly that on that final drive. He was electric, running for first downs, making unbelievable throws into traffic over the middle of the field, and showed up when it mattered most. But as I was saying, this generation, these people they just cannot stand the success of other people. This country used to like winners. We're 2-time World War winners. We won the revolution, won our freedoms. We like a winner, and no longer. Now we just look to tear down people who succeed because we can't, work hard enough for the success ourselves. Where's the credit? Where's the story? Where are the people who like to watch the Rocky movies and love the underdog? And we're throwing shade at Brock Purdy at every single opportunity we get? Really? We're not going to root for Mr. Irrelevant, the 7th-round pick, to go? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to see the shade that people try to throw at this dude when he very well, if it wasn't for the injury against the Eagles last year, you never know. And of course now, the Eagles won that rematch, but now you get to see them, there were a lot of people crying about it. Yeah, well, now guess who's actually in the later stages of the playoffs once again? The San Francisco 49ers. So to see the shade that Brock Purdy catches, I think it's a straight up jealousy to see that the 49ers can put together this system no matter who's at the helm. And there's more to get to with the Brock Purdy story, which I will be covering with the relationship with Tyrese Halliburton, who's had an incredible season for the Indiana Pacers. Both teammates at Iowa State. They were good friends there. That's a separate story that I will be touching upon on Monday as well. But yeah, I cannot stand to see the hate that Brock Purdy gets. Of course, struggling, but that final drive by Brock Purdy was... It was just really historic in terms of, in my opinion. When, you think about it, when you go, let's see, it was before the interception. It was a 12-play, 69-yard drive. So he goes, pass short. He goes 7-yard completion to Jennings. Then they hand it off to McCaffrey. Then Purdy able to pick up the first down with his legs. Then goes to McCaffrey. Then incomplete. Then goes to Ayuk for 10 yards. Then goes to Conley for 17, which is an incredible throw. I believe the Ayuk one was over the middle. No, not there yet. The Conley one was an incredible throw. Kittle for 8 yards. Then McCaffrey going down. Then 2-minute warning. Then McCaffrey. Then a Purdy scramble, a huge pickup. And then the field goal. So, yeah, then it was a touchdown for McCaffrey, and then, wow, I'm losing it here. See the Moody extra point. It was the McCaffrey run through. The guy has weapons. It's not his fault. It's like, why are we faulting people for having good teammates? I mean, he at the end of the day, he still has to make the right decisions. He's still the signal caller. He's still probably at the most stressful position. And we love to give credit to all the other quarterbacks when we're going to take it away from Brock Purdy because of how good of his teammates are. You're trying to make it seem like you could put any quarterback in this position and they would succeed. It's not the case. It's not that simple. So clearly, there was something going on here with Brock Purdy. There are some seriously talented throws that he was making and making under pressure while struggling for some of the game. There was not a lot of rhythm going on. But when he finds it, he's dangerous. And he's still so young. And he's coming back off of the UCL injury. It really is a unique story that I think that people should appreciate more. But instead, everybody wants to tear this kid down. And I can't stand for it. But I was impressed with their playoff victory in that final drive from Brock Purdy over the Green Bay Packers. As we go to another incredible story with the Detroit Lions. Now, they're one win away from going to a Super Bowl. Now, get this about the Detroit Lions. It's been quite a while here since they've seen this type of success, and they actually went 0-16 and have now gone to an NFC Championship game before the Dallas Cowboys have actually made it back to an NFC Championship game. This is the last time they were there, which is incredible when you think about it. But overall, this story here, I said it earlier in the year that I thought that the Lions were a Super Bowl team, and then I kind of retracted said statement because I just, it was, there were just some, I don't know how to put it, there were some question marks, and defensively, they certainly still do scare me, but I think that they're just led by Campbell. They have this resilience. They have this resolve. I think Jared Goff is a top 10 quarterback in the league. And I'll be able to tease who I think he's actually better than. Again, their defense, while their defense is suspect, they do force turnovers. They have a dual-headed monster in the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. But overall, Jared Goff made the right plays and the right decisions. He's now led two teams to an NFC Championship game. So, I mean, to see that these guys were kind of cast off, written off, I mean, the drafting of this football team has been incredible. I think that in terms of how they've been able to get offensive weapons and defensive weapons too, between Hutchinson, Brian Branch, defensively as well too. Jack Campbell, really, really good. I think the pickup of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, of course, coming up pretty big. Just has to be the man of the moment against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Doug Barnes as well too. I mean, it's a really well put together football team defensively. They bend and they break a lot, but they also just find a way to force turnovers. But offensively, with Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams will come into his own, I believe. But Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the David Montgomery signing. I mean, and being able to get what they've been able to get out of Jared Goff. A lot of people gave, including myself, that I thought that it was really the success to give to McVay for him. But he has really flipped the script when it comes down to it in his career with the Rams. And then once again, he was able to flip the script again now with the Lions. I mean, written off a couple times. It was kind of a battle of written off quarterbacks. Jared Goff had been written off at a time. Baker Mayfield had been written off. And still a lot of credit to the Buccaneers for the season that they had. And we'll see what they decide to go ahead and pay Baker Mayfield. But I do have to give some credit to a division rival. This is exactly the position the Saints should have been in. They should have been beating a team like the Eagles. They should have been making it in. And I think that they were a better football team than the Buccaneers. But at the end of the day, the Buccaneers are in the dance. And I think they have more discipline. I think they're better coached, and which isn't saying much because it's Dennis Allen. I don't have a lot of respect for Todd Bowles either. But at the end of the day, he's a better coach than Dennis Allen. That's why they were in that position. But again, Jared Goff and the Lions, you have a top 10 quarterback. You have a pass rush that can get to the quarterback. You have a defense that can force turnovers, and you have an offensive line that can run and protect the passer. I mean, and you have two running backs that can make plays out of the backfield in the pass game and in the run game. So overall, and a guy like Craig Reynolds that just comes in from time to time as well too. So I thought that they met the formula, and they are the worst defense left of the four teams. But I thought that, that they had the formula to be a Super Bowl team, and now they are one win away from the Super Bowl. I would have liked this game to be won a little more handily. I know they covered the spread, and maybe I just don't have as much respect for the Buccaneers as I should have. I thought this very well could have been a two-score game, but they do end up covering the spread, which I think should mean that, in a divisional round playoff game, you cover the spread. That tells you that it was a legit victory in the Detroit Lions. Obviously, moving on to play today. Last but not least, we have who else but the Kansas City Chiefs? The GOAT. He is on his way to becoming the greatest of all time. But wait. The only way he's doing it is if he wins 7 Super Bowls. Because Tom Brady, if he gets 6, right? Of course, there was always those conversations about Tom Brady meeting with him after those games and some of those losses. Yes. And I think he's very well on his way to being one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. Probably already is. But more importantly, Tom Brady passed that torch. But before he passed that torch, he made sure to cover his ass. CYA. In the blue-collar business, they call it a CYA. Cover your ass. Always, just make sure that nothing ever comes back to bite you in the ass. Cover yourself. Make sure that no one, responsibility and everything like that, make sure you're making all the right decisions so you don't get in trouble. Tom Brady did it. He went 2-0 against this guy in the playoffs before he departed the league. Unless he miraculously comes back. Hey, Gerard Mayo might talk about retirement. Who knows? But as good as this guy can be, he's going to have to do so much more than Brady to get in that conversation just because of Tom Brady's head-to-head success against him. But that should not take away from how good he is. Him and Travis Kelce, this is kind of, people don't want to admit it, and that's why they really don't like the Chiefs. And again, this country hates a winner. They hate the fact that a team can find success because they're a well-oiled machine. They need their participation trophy. It's not fair. Wah. This dude is one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen. He is inevitable. He is Thanos. He is going to get his way. It's going to happen. Now, I mean, to tease into my upcoming picks, but there's no way that he doesn't go to another Super Bowl. I don't know if he wins it, but there's no way he's not going to another Super Bowl. I mean, we'll talk about the Bills a little bit more right after this, but because I don't think it's Josh Allen's fault, but Patrick Mahomes, man, I think he's going to be the next greatest of all time. I really do think he's going to be the next GOAT. But, still a long road to get there. Him and Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce jumping out of the suite into the stands. What an incredible scene that was. And I think it's at this point in the career of Patrick Mahomes with the defense that he has and less weapons on offense that he just works with efficiency, right? So you have him throwing 2 touchdown passes to Travis Kelce. He goes for 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 17 of 23. Very, very efficient game from Patrick Mahomes. Isaiah Pacheco was good on the ground. Like I said, the 2 touchdowns to Kelce, a couple big plays downfield. Again, this is another guy, when the lights are on, he is at his best. And again, there's been a lot of question marks this season about what they were doing. Like I said, I do compare it to the dynastic approach of the Patriots, where they were like, well, we're not going to pay our receiving threats, and we're going to make things work with Mahomes. And clearly, with Kelce dealing with injuries and a couple of receivers dropping passes. But again, they have turned it up. They have turned up in these playoffs, and I think that they are certainly still a Super Bowl contender. And their defense is, I think, what we won't talk about enough. I think if you have a defense like they've put together, with 3 guys making double-digit tackles, and then you have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, there's no question about they will be in every year. So a defense playing to the level that they have, and then Patrick Mahomes' efficiency, he doesn't turn the ball over. I think he's like 5-0 in his last 5 playoff games that he hasn't committed the turnover. It's been an impressive run from Mahomes. I mean, when will it come to an end? I don't know. I don't know. It might come to an end against this Ravens team, because this Ravens team is very good against opposing quarterbacks too. But overall, an impressive run from Patrick Mahomes. And in that game, I mean, you can't blame Josh Allen. I mean, they turn him into. I like when they kind of turn him loose in the playoffs, but I don't like when they turn him into the one-man band. He had 3 total touchdowns, 2 on the ground. He led the team in rushing. I don't think they fed James Cook enough, although the Chiefs' defense did a very good job against the run. Which is why when the Chiefs can let Mahomes play efficient football and dictate the pace, I think that's the biggest thing too, is that when they can control the ball more. I mean, the Bills did control a lot of the ball, they weren't really methodical though. Like they would get to these third down. I mean, it's tough. I mean, they were 7 for 14 on third down. Kansas City was 1 of 5. You think they were converting all these third downs, going on these long drives. But the Chiefs are just so surgical. They're so precise. And they get the job done. But Josh Allen, 26 for 39 for 186 yards through the air. Like I said, he had 12 carries for 72 yards. He was the one-man band. And I thought that at times this year with Joe Brady calling plays that they really had gotten away from it. But then the playoffs came back around, and they turned him back into Superman. I mean, they come all the way back to win the AFC East. They get the higher seeding, and it's in Buffalo. And I really thought that was going to be the difference in front of Bills Mafia. I think this was finally their time with a weaker Chiefs team, I guess you could say, because of their offensive weapons and the struggles. But at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes with the inevitability to take it. But you still can't blame him. I still think that you needed to do more to make sure that Josh Allen was more protected in this sense. I think he's a great player, but I think you need to save a lot of the moments that Josh Allen would go through that he had to make to just keep you in that game. should be saved for moments where he should be winning you the game. I think that's the biggest difference. I think that with a team of that talent level, you should be in it enough, and you shouldn't be truthfully calling upon him to be Superman until the absolute moments. I think that's what Mahomes does the most, right? Is I think they can kind of conserve his energy for the big moments, and then when they really need him, I mean he punches through for them. So that was my thing with Josh Allen. I thought that they should have protected him more in that sense, but we're unable to, and we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of questions with that roster moving forward, but it allows me now to get into talk of the NFC and AFC championship games. We're kicking it off with the NFC championship. You can hear the music playing. You should be able to hear the music playing. I don't know if this is doing its thing or again where I can't. It would appear that that's the case. We got the music playing anyways. Just like last time in our picks of Brandon Mendes. I was 3-1 last week in spread and straight up, so pretty happy about that. So it's been a continued good season. NFC championship game, which is the later one. I'm going in reverse order here. Really should have went AFC first. Nonetheless, I think that in every position group on the field, the Detroit Lions match up with the San Francisco 49ers. Individual talent, I think that the 49ers are better in a couple of those positions, but I think overall, from the group perspective, pass rush, offensive line, there's a whole group, linebacker core, secondary, I think that they are just as good of a football team. And you know what? I think that Jared Goff is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. All that being said, it has San Francisco as a 7.5-point favorite, so clearly I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But I think that I do, and I'm taking the Lions outright to beat the San Francisco 49ers, not just to cover the spread, but outright to beat the San Francisco 49ers and go to the Super Bowl. Again, I think when you go position group by position group, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deebo Samuel is supposed to be playing with no limitations, but I still think that he's going to be banged up. McCaffrey, yes, but I think that between Montgomery and Gibbs and the offensive line, Penei Sewell, Trent Williams, I mean, there's a lot of similarities between these teams and the creativity. They're both 12-5 teams now making it this point in the conference championship. So the Niners had a bias with their 13-5, and the Lions are 14-5. So I think that they match up everywhere, and I think that when it comes down to the quarterback position, I like Jared Goff better. I think Jared Goff is going to go back to another Super Bowl, the Detroit Lions. Now we can transition to the AFC Championship game, in which it is Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in the playoff matchup. It's a fantastic one, but I just don't think it's going to be Lamar's time yet. I still think it is Patrick Mahomes' time to shine. I will not bet against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs at this point. I know what I'm watching. I've seen it. No one is stopping Patrick Mahomes. Baltimore, 4.5-point favorites. It's going to be in Baltimore. And I'm taking the Chiefs outright. I'm taking double underdogs to go to the Super Bowl. How about this? The Super Bowl will be the last game of the season, obviously. But remember that first game of the season between the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs? Way back in week one. It was Thursday night, September 7th. And the Detroit Lions defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 21-20. To open up the season. The season is going to end just how it began, with the Lions and the Chiefs squaring off in the Super Bowl. That is my prediction. Tickets only as low as $7 and $4 in Baltimore today. Look at the ticket prices. I don't think weather's really going to play into either or. It's nice and sunny in Santa Clara, California. For that one, it's 6:30 on Fox. The first one on CBS. Again, Patrick Mahomes, he is inevitable. I am not betting against Patrick Mahomes. I think that they will make. I expect, as much as I like Lamar Jackson, I want him to succeed. I do see Lamar Jackson struggling today. I do think Lamar Jackson will struggle against this Chiefs defense. I don't think Mahomes is going to be absolutely explosive, but I think that Mahomes will outduel Lamar Jackson. I think that Lamar Jackson will struggle against this Chiefs defense. And I think it'll be Chiefs-Lions in the Super Bowl. That is my prediction. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. I think that music just started coming to my headphones right then and there. Little late, but we'll hear it in the post-production. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Like I said, once again, to be sure to follow on all social medias. I'll be posting more clips and doing more shows. Obviously coming up, just getting so busy at times, it's hard to get up here, but I have to make sure that I make these picks and I give you guys my thoughts on the NFL, because that's the fave right now. That's just what I love. So we'll have more coming up. I'll have more news for you guys coming this week, as well as I can officialize some things, so stay tuned for that. But we'll have more stories. We'll have more guests coming up as well. I know George Bannister is supposed to come on this week, but I had a game up at Lowell. Kind of changed my scheduling a little bit, but we will figure it out. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. It is your boy Rufus, signing off.